Getting a new job is a massive achievement. Getting violently fired exactly 2 hours later because you dropped a casket or insulted the CEO is an entirely different level of skill. We found 50 absolute train wrecks who managed to permanently ruin their careers before their first coffee break even ended. 1. Imagine walking into your first retail shift and spotting a mysterious red button tucked perfectly under the register. Naturally, a new hire at a convenience store decided his curiosity was more important than common sense, so he gave it a solid push just to see what would happen. Spoiler alert, it was the silent panic alarm. Within minutes, a fully geared SWAT team swarmed the building and violently tackled a highly confused grandmother who was just trying to purchase some knitting needles. When the cops demanded to know where the armed robbers were hiding, this genius just shrugged and said he liked pushing buttons. Good luck explaining that one on your next job application, buddy. 2. Handing the keys of a $90,000 Corvette to a fresh-faced lot porter is basically begging the universe for a tragedy. This incredibly confident new guy was specifically told to grab a bucket and politely wash the luxury vehicle. Instead, he decided the high-performance engine required a quick joyride around the dealership asphalt first. He completely lost control of the rear tires almost instantly and wrapped that fiberglass masterpiece tightly around a concrete light pole before the heater even kicked on. He managed to total a highly expensive sports car before he even located the soap. You have to respect that level of terrifying efficiency. 3. There are bad first days, and then there is dropping a beloved grandmother into a dirt hole at terminal velocity. Working at a cemetery requires solemn respect and basic mechanical awareness. During his very first burial service, a rookie groundskeeper panicked while operating the heavy mechanical lowering device. Instead of gently toggling the lever to the slow descent setting, he forcefully hit the free fall mechanism. The polished wooden casket dropped like an absolute rock and slammed into the bottom of the grave with a massive thud that literally shook the grass. The grieving family was utterly horrified, and I am pretty sure the deceased felt that impact. 4. Radiation is certainly not a joke, but this overly eager dental assistant definitely managed to turn a routine morning checkup into a full-blown science fiction horror film. She was tasked with taking a panoramic mouth X-ray of an older gentleman, but completely neglected to ask him to remove his bulky dentures first. The expensive machine spun around and produced a high-definition image of a terrifying human, possessing 2 completely distinct floating rows of teeth. We are talking full-on shark-human hybrid territory here. The head dentist laughed until he cried, but the patient was absolutely furious about soaking up unnecessary radiation, just because the new girl forgot how human anatomy works. 5. Mechanics have exactly one golden rule that separates them from total chaos, and that is to always put the plug back into the oil pan. On his maiden voyage underneath a luxury sedan, a new lube technician dutifully drained the old sludge out of a customer's expensive Mercedes. He then completely forgot the metal drain plug and aggressively poured in quarts of fresh synthetic oil, instantly creating a highly expensive waterfall directly onto the concrete shop floor. But he did not stop there. He jumped into the driver's seat and proudly started the engine. The motor completely seized up within 10 seconds, creating the most soul-crushing silence you could ever imagine. 6. You would honestly think that getting hired at a city zoo means you have a basic understanding of apex predators, but apparently not. A newly minted groundskeeper stared at a massive, heavily muscled tiger behind a thick chain-link fence and genuinely decided the magnificent beast looked a little lonely. So, he enthusiastically shoved his fingers right through the metal gaps to give it a friendly little pet. The tiger, acting purely on millions of years of hunting instinct, violently disagreed with this unsolicited affection. Miraculously, the guy managed to snatch his hand back and keep all his digits attached. But he gained a very personalized near-death lesson about the harsh realities of the food chain. 7. Popping in a movie is the oldest trick in the desperate substitute teacher playbook, but you actually need to check what is on the disc before hitting play. One incredibly lazy sub brought a random DVD from her apartment, assumed it was a goofy animated cartoon based on the generic cover, and confidently fed it to the player for a room full of innocent first graders. It turned out to be an unrated, extremely graphic and bloody horror film. 20 terrified little kids went home deeply traumatized that afternoon. The local school board actually had to call an emergency evening meeting just to officially banish her from the district forever. 8. Small talk is a highly delicate corporate art form, and blatantly insulting people to their faces is generally considered a bad strategy for closing deals. At a fancy introductory business lunch, a brand new account manager leaned across the table and made a horribly snarky joke about how fake and plastic the women sitting at the adjacent booth looked. The incredibly wealthy client stopped chewing his steak, stared at the kid with absolutely dead eyes, and quietly mentioned that the woman in the red dress was his wife of 20 years. The multi-million-dollar contract died right there on the table, and the new guy was suddenly looking for a completely different career path. 9. Chemical hair dye is a very precise science, not some magical, forgiving painting class where mistakes just wash away. A salon assistant on her very first day managed to completely mix up the color bowls in the back room. She aggressively applied jet black permanent dye instead of golden blonde to a highly demanding VIP client. To make matters infinitely worse, this specific woman was getting married the very next morning. When the foil finally came off and the bride looked in the salon mirror, she let out a blood-curdling scream loud enough to shatter the storefront windows. You simply cannot ungoth a furious bride 12 hours before she walks down the aisle. 10. If your entire livelihood revolves around writing frosting words on expensive pastries, you should probably know how to spell basic English vocabulary. A rookie bakery decorator was tasked with customizing a massive Sweet 16 cake and confidently wrote "Happy Birthday" in thick, bright blue icing. When the highly irate mother pointed out the ridiculous typo at the counter, this absolute genius panicked and tried to fix it by vigorously rubbing his bare thumb over the letters. He instantly turned a highly expensive custom dessert into a massive, unreadable blue smudge. The bakery had to hand over a full cash refund, and the kid was instantly banished to washing sticky pans in the back room. 11. Office machinery gets insanely hot, which is a brutal physics lesson one corporate intern learned the hard way on a Tuesday morning. He desperately wanted to look professional and laminate his temporary paper identification badge, but he completely forgot to take it out of the thick plastic protective holder first. He shoved the whole clustered mess into the industrial laminator, and the plastic melted instantly, completely fusing the expensive machine shut. Within seconds, the Human Resources office was rapidly filling with toxic, thick black smoke, triggering the overhead fire alarms. He did not get a permanent badge that day, but he did get a massive invoice for destroying expensive company property. 12. Let me give you some completely free career advice. Never park your vehicle in the space clearly marked reserved for Dr. Smith unless your last name is actually Smith and you hold a valid medical degree. A new dental assistant totally ignored the giant painted warning signs simply because she was wearing uncomfortable high heels and did not want to walk from the back of the lot. Well, the actual doctor arrived, could not park his luxury SUV, blocked her little sedan in, and immediately called a ruthless towing company. Her car was getting violently dragged down the interstate while she was still sitting in the break room sipping coffee and filling out her tax forms. 13. Retail security tags are literally engineered by absolute sadists to ruin your day if you try to force them open without the proper magnet. A new sales associate at a high-end bridal boutique could not locate the magnetic release tool, so she boldly grabbed a pair of heavy metal pliers and tried to pry a stubborn ink tag off a $2,000 wedding gown. You can easily guess what happened next. The pressurized tag violently exploded, completely covering the pristine white silk in permanent, unwashable dark blue dye. The absolute worst part of this disaster? The expecting bride was scheduled to pick up her dress just 2 hours later for final alterations. 14. Working on a steep residential roof requires a steady grip, solid balance, and an intense awareness of what is parked directly below you. A newly hired contractor violently fumbled his heavy steel framing hammer near the edge of the slippery gutters and watched helplessly as it plummeted 2 full stories straight down. It did not hit the soft grass. Instead, it smashed directly through the panoramic glass roof of the homeowner's brand new Tesla parked innocently in the driveway. The resulting crash triggered the high-tech Sentry alarm, aggressively blasting loud classical music as the only applause this guy was ever going to receive for his incredible performance. 15. If you do not actually know how to drive a manual transmission, for the love of everything, do not pretend you are a professional race car driver. A fresh valet confidently hopped into a gorgeous vintage Porsche, ground the delicate gears like a cheap coffee grinder, and stalled it halfway up a very steep, narrow concrete ramp. Panic completely took over his brain. He released the heavy clutch, completely forgot the brake pedal, and rolled backward at high speed directly into the massive grille of an extended limousine. He successfully created a multi-$100,000 sandwich of twisted luxury metal on his very first afternoon of parking cars. 16. You would think a museum security guard would inherently understand that the #1 rule of an art gallery is to absolutely never touch the highly fragile displays. An incredibly bored rookie guard was staring at a bizarre modern art sculpture and decided to violently poke it with his finger just to see if it was made of soft foam. It was certainly not soft, but it was incredibly top-heavy. The massive structure wobbled aggressively, toppled over, and shattered a $100,000 masterpiece into a million abstract little shards all over the hardwood floor. Honestly, the pile of broken trash probably looked just as artistic, but the museum curator was absolutely not amused. 17. Having solid confidence in the workplace is great, but suffering from massive, unchecked delusion is a fast track to the unemployment line. Exactly 2 hours into his very first shift, a teenage burger flipper confidently marched into the busy manager's office, wiped grease on his pants, and aggressively demanded a massive raise because he felt he was way overqualified to operate a metal spatula. The exhausted manager stared at him in utter, blinking disbelief. He was instantly promoted to the rank of paying customer and politely told to vacate the premises forever. You have to respect the absolute audacity, even if it is completely unhinged from reality. 18. Working at an exclusive, high-society country club requires grace and extreme situational awareness, neither of which this kid possessed. A newly hired teenage caddy was aggressively showing off by trying to drift a heavy golf cart down a wet grass hill. He violently lost control, ejected the wealthy club president's highly expensive custom golf clubs into the mud, and drove the entire motorized cart straight into a murky water hazard. He spent his entire first afternoon awkwardly dredging the swamp for titanium drivers, while his furious boss silently watched him from the pristine green. 19. To be completely fair, giant commercial bins of white powder do look remarkably similar in a chaotic, fast-paced kitchen environment. However, a new baker's assistant managed to confidently confuse the bulk salt bin with the massive sugar container while aggressively mixing up a huge batch of morning chocolate chip cookies. The bakery actually sold over 200 of these incredibly salty nightmares before the first furious customer came rushing back into the store, physically gagging into a napkin. This guy managed to single-handedly raise the collective blood pressure of half the town before 10 in the morning. That is not baking. That is basically biological warfare against the local community. 20. Medical professionals will warn you repeatedly that magnetic resonance imaging machines are basically giant, terrifying black holes that are always turned on. Despite bright yellow warning signs aggressively plastered over every single door, a new hospital orderly just strolled right into the active room, loudly pushing a heavy metal cleaning cart. The machine instantly grabbed that cart and violently sucked it across the linoleum floor at 50 miles per hour, brutally pinning the poor guy against the scanner. He survived with major bruises, but he caused over $2 million in severe structural damage in a fraction of a second. The hospital administration was absolutely furious. 21. Precision surveying equipment costs significantly more than your average luxury sports vehicle, so you should probably do your best to protect it from traffic. A rookie land surveyor boldly set up his robotic total station right in the dead center of an active commercial driveway simply because he wanted to get a slightly better angle for his measurements. A massive delivery truck aggressively threw it into reverse, completely failed to see the little yellow tripod, and casually crushed $20,000 of hyper-advanced optical technology into a pile of sad, extremely expensive plastic dust. He essentially vaporized his entire annual salary before his morning coffee even got cold. 22. There is a very specific, legally binding reason that corporate payroll data is kept under incredibly strict lock and key. An exceptionally careless human resources assistant was supposed to email the highly confidential master salary spreadsheet directly to the chief financial officer for review. Instead, her fingers slipped, she auto-filled the massive entire staff distribution list and violently slammed the send button. Suddenly, every single employee in the corporate building discovered that the notoriously lazy guy in the marketing department was somehow making 10 grand more than the senior managers. The sheer level of rage that swept through that office was legendary, and productivity dropped to absolute zero. 23. Physics is an absolutely cruel mistress when you are carelessly dealing with massive pallets of liquid grocery inventory. A new stock boy desperately tried to pull a massive wooden pallet stacked absurdly high with premium red wine using a manual jack, but he arrogantly decided to take the tight corner at maximum speed. Centrifugal force violently took over, sending hundreds of glass bottles crashing directly onto the hard concrete floor in a massive tidal wave. The aisle instantly looked like a horrific murder scene straight out of a slasher film, and the kid spent the rest of his extremely short shift smelling like a walking, talking vineyard. 24. Lying on your resume is a proud American tradition, but you should never boldly lie about physical skills that require throwing fire around paying customers. A newly hired restaurant cook loudly claimed he was an absolute master at running the theatrical, high-heat hibachi grill. During his very first table performance, he tried to dramatically toss a raw egg high into the air with his metal spatula. He completely missed, violently slipped on the slimy yolk that hit the floor, and fell face first onto the 400-degree iron griddle. He walked out of the restaurant forever with a permanent burn mark on his cheek, shaped exactly like a jumbo shrimp. 25. We currently live in a terrifying surveillance state where smart doorbells are literally recording your every single embarrassing move. A deeply lazy delivery driver accidentally dropped a heavy cardboard package clearly marked fragile glassware onto a concrete porch and audibly heard the expensive contents violently shatter. Instead of leaving an honest note, he gently kicked the damaged box against the heavy wooden door to try and hide the massive dent. He slowly looked up and locked eyes directly with the glaring lens of a high-definition security camera. The furious homeowner had the brutal video posted on local social media groups before the delivery truck even turned the corner. 26. Social media addiction has genuinely broken the brains of the modern workforce beyond any reasonable repair. A fast food trainee decided to boldly live-stream his very first hour on the fry line, giving his 12 highly bored followers a grand, unsanitary tour of the filthy kitchen. He thought it would be absolutely hilarious to dip the toe of his dirty street sneaker into the boiling deep fryer, just for some quick internet clout. The local health inspector was not watching the live stream, but the corporate district manager certainly was. The kid was officially terminated via a highly aggressive all-caps comment typed directly into his own public chat. 27. Staring at freshly poured, perfectly smoothed wet concrete can be incredibly deceiving because it looks totally solid to the untrained eye. A rookie paving laborer decided he absolutely did not want to walk around the massive perimeter and took a bold shortcut straight across the brand new sidewalk just to reach the catering lunch truck faster. He immediately sank all the way to his kneecaps and got utterly stuck like a swamp monster trapped in quicksand. The rest of the furious construction crew had to literally chip him out with metal shovels like an ancient fossil, while the site foreman screamed in pure, unadulterated agony over the ruined labor. 28. Bragging to the hiring manager about being forklift certified is all fun and games until somebody actually hands you the keys to the heavy machinery. Within exactly 10 minutes of operating the massive rig, a warehouse new hire managed to completely miss the steel rack and violently impaled a massive pallet of industrial-grade exterior paint. He instantly created a slippery, neon-colored river that furiously flooded the entire loading dock, completely ruining over $40,000 of pristine cardboard inventory. His brief career in logistics ended right then and there, standing in a massive puddle of blue disaster while the supervisor questioned every single life choice that led to hiring him. 29. Showing $1 million house to potential buyers is incredibly difficult when you cannot actually figure out how to open the front door. A brand new real estate assistant dutifully put the only set of property keys back into the secure metal lockbox on the porch, but immediately forgot the simple 4-digit combination code she just entered. She stood there awkwardly with the wealthy clients for 20 agonizing minutes, frantically spinning the tiny metal dials and guessing random numbers. The buyers finally got so uncomfortably annoyed by her incompetence that they just silently walked back to their luxury SUV and drove away to literally buy a different house. 30. Stacking heavy inventory boxes actually requires some basic structural engineering skills, or at least a tiny shred of common sense. An overly ambitious warehouse picker wildly tried to save time by creating a massive cardboard megastack on his tiny rolling cart, building a ridiculous, unstable tower over 12 feet high. The moment he forcefully pushed it, the entire structure wobbled aggressively, violently tipped over, and triggered a devastating domino effect that forcefully knocked over shelving in 3 different aisles. Instead of aggressively pulling orders, he spent his entire first 8-hour shift physically digging himself out of a humiliating cardboard avalanche, while his coworkers openly laughed. 31. Office introductions are always nerve-wracking, but weird verbal slip-ups can easily ruin your entire professional reputation forever. For 8 agonizingly long hours, a deeply nervous new corporate assistant accidentally called his strict female manager Mommy instead of her actual name, Tammy. It happened organically the very first time, but his fragile brain panicked so hard that he just kept stubbornly repeating it because he was way too socially paralyzed to admit the bizarre mistake. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the psychological damage was permanently done, and every single person in the massive department was entirely too uncomfortable to even make fleeting eye contact with the guy. 32. Being a highly paid personal bodyguard for a famous celebrity means staying entirely alert at all times to protect the client. On his very first night shift outside a luxury penthouse suite, a heavily muscled new security guard somehow managed to fall deeply, unavoidably asleep while physically standing upright in the quiet hallway. He snored so aggressively that he actually woke up the terrified VIP client. The celebrity opened the wooden door just in time to watch his supposedly elite, highly trained protector tip over like a felled timber tree and faceplant brutally into the expensive hallway carpet. 33. Commercial office plumbing is usually held together by cheap pipes and daily prayers, but the new guy simply did not care about the delicate ecosystem. After vigorously washing his hands, he confidently flushed a massive, tightly compacted wad of industrial-strength brown paper towels down the employee toilet, causing a violent brown geyser to instantly erupt in the men's room. The foul, murky sewage floodwater rapidly seeped under the heavy wooden door and completely saturated the expensive hallway carpet. The absolute stench of his terrible bathroom mistake aggressively lingered in the air vents for over a week, silently reminding everyone of his incredible lack of basic human logic. 34. The simple copy and paste function on your computer keyboard is essentially a loaded weapon in the fast-paced corporate world. A junior data analyst was frantically trying to paste a complex line of essential code into the massive company-wide chat channel for everyone to review. Instead, he accidentally pasted the exact text from his very last personal internet search, which was literally asking Google how to properly fake your own death to get out of work. The channel went completely dead silent until the ruthless chief executive officer replied with a single, highly passive-aggressive thumbs-up emoji. Building security was quietly waiting at the kid's desk within 5 short minutes. 35. The financial stakes at a high-end dry cleaning service are astronomical, especially when dealing with garments worn by the ultra-wealthy. A new pressing assistant was casually using an industrial hot iron on an authentic, historically priceless vintage tuxedo when her smartphone violently vibrated. She totally zoned out to read the juicy text message and left the boiling hot metal plate pressed directly onto the delicate silk lapel. She successfully melted a massive, smoking hole straight through the irreplaceable fabric exactly 2 hours before the furious client was scheduled to walk down a major celebrity red carpet. 36. Eating the paying customer's food while strictly on the clock is certainly a bold career strategy for a delivery driver. On his very first outbound run, A highly hungry driver parked his car down the street, brazenly opened the cardboard box, and meticulously picked off every single slice of spicy pepperoni before casually handing it over. The completely bewildered customer immediately saw the perfect little round grease outlines baked deep into the cheese where the delicious meat used to be. The furious buyer aggressively called the store manager to scream about the blatant theft, while the clueless driver was literally still pulling out of their wet driveway. 37. Making wild, uneducated assumptions about the corporate hierarchy is a fantastic way to violently torpedo your entire career before it even starts. Imagine swaggering loudly into the break room and casually handing your dirty trash to an older gentleman in a plain suit, completely assuming he is the maintenance guy. One incredibly arrogant sales rep did exactly that, loudly commanding the old man to look alive and clear the messy table. Plot twist: that quiet older man was the billionaire owner of the entire company who had just flown in privately to evaluate the new regional team. Talk about making a legendary first and absolute last impression. 38. Warning signs that strictly say do not feed the monkeys absolutely apply to your own personal lunch as well. A careless new zookeeper casually left his tightly wrapped ham sandwich resting on a metal enclosure railing while he cleaned a water trough. A highly intelligent and incredibly crafty macaque monkey snatched the lunch, completely devoured the plastic wrapper, and then violently threw the processed ham meat back at a horrified group of tourists. The exotic animal veterinary bill required to pump the monkey's stomach and check for plastic damage was legally deducted straight from the keeper's tragically short final paycheck. You just got outsmarted by a small primate. 39. The Dewey Decimal System is the sacred, unbending law of the public library, not a casual suggestion for interior design. A newly hired library page looked at the massive wooden shelves and boldly decided that organizing the thick books by jacket color looked way more aesthetic for the vibe of the room than using those boring little numbers. He spent 4 grueling hours meticulously rearranging the entire, massive non-fiction section into a beautiful, completely useless rainbow. He made it physically impossible to locate a single piece of literature and successfully infuriated every single veteran librarian within a 5-mile radius. Books are for reading, buddy, not for colorful decorating. 40. Transporting massive amounts of corporate wealth requires strictly following federal security protocols, not just blindly hoping for the best. A rookie armored truck guard was aggressively loading heavy canvas bags of pure cash into the steel back of the secure vehicle. He absent-mindedly set a heavy bag containing over $50,000 directly onto the exterior rear bumper so he could bend down and tie his combat boot. He totally forgot about it, forcefully slammed the vault doors, and drove directly onto a busy interstate highway, instantly creating a highly illegal, chaotic cash tornado behind the speeding truck. 41. Gravity remains utterly undefeated, especially when you are awkwardly working at an expensive, high-society country club wedding. A sweating banquet server was carrying a massive, incredibly heavy 5-tier designer wedding cake across the crowded room. He dropped a tiny silver fork and, in a moment of pure stupidity, tried to be a ninja and catch the utensil with his polished shoe. He instantly lost his footing, and that monumental sugar tower face-planted violently onto the polished wooden dance floor just seconds before the bridal party walked into the room. He essentially managed to single-handedly cancel a $40,000 reception with one incredibly clumsy ninja kick. 42. Covering for your lazy coworkers is generally a noble gesture, but you have to actually pay attention to your immediate surroundings before committing fraud. An absolute genius of a retail worker boldly tried to forcefully swipe a plastic time card for his buddy who was running 20 minutes late. The only glaring problem was the strict store manager was standing literally 3 feet away, silently watching him scan 2 completely different identification badges into the computer system. Getting immediately terminated for blatant corporate time theft before you have even worked a single minute of your own shift is practically a gold medal in the Idiot Olympics. 43. We all universally despise incredibly boring corporate orientation videos, but you simply cannot just walk out of the secure building whenever you feel like it. One exceptionally bold new trainee casually told his supervisor he needed to step outside to grab a specific blue pen from his car. Instead, he boldly started his engine, drove all the way back to his distant apartment, took a massive 3-hour nap, and then tried to awkwardly sneak back into the conference room. When confronted by security, he legitimately claimed he got totally lost in the small office parking lot. Buddy, we all have GPS maps on our phones. 44. The deadly reply all button has literally destroyed more corporate careers than actual workplace incompetence ever will. A cocky marketing rookie received a standard, boring welcome email that explicitly copied all 500 employees in the massive building. Instead of typing a polite greeting, he accidentally attached a highly explicit, deeply private text message meant for his furious girlfriend. The message described, in incredibly vivid and graphic detail, exactly which female coworker in accounting he desperately wanted to hook up with after work. Security guards aggressively escorted him out the glass front doors before the technical department even had a chance to generate his computer login password. 45. Everybody basically knows that kindergartners are absolute, uncontrollable chaos, but you absolutely cannot publicly announce that to the entire neighborhood. A frazzled substitute teacher sat down at the wooden desk, completely forgot that the classroom intercom switch was toggled to broadcast, and aggressively muttered that the loud children were feral little monsters. The strict principal, the administration staff, and every single angry parent waiting outside in the car pickup line heard her vicious assessment crystal clear over the massive loudspeakers. She was quietly intercepted and permanently escorted off the elementary school property by a security officer before the kids even came back from outdoor recess. 46. Commercial gym treadmills are essentially high-powered rubber conveyor belts designed for extreme cardio torture, and you must respect their speed. A ridiculously cocky new gym staffer grabbed a plastic spray bottle and tried to look incredibly cool by leaping onto a machine to aggressively wipe down the digital console. He entirely failed to realize the thick belt was actively running at top sprinting speed. It instantly swept his feet out and shot him violently off the back, exactly like a human cannonball. He crashed aggressively into a heavy steel rack of metal dumbbells, shattering 2 of his ribs and permanently ending his brief career in the fitness industry. 47. High-security bank vault time locks are absolute non-negotiable pieces of heavy machinery that absolutely do not care about your personal schedule. A careless junior teller ducked into the massive steel vault to quickly grab some heavy cash drawers exactly 5 minutes before the automated weekend security timer engaged. He got deeply distracted scrolling through social media, text messages, completely ignored the loud warning buzzers, and the gigantic multi-ton metal door swung heavily shut. He was hopelessly sealed inside for the entire weekend with absolutely no cell service, millions of dollars in cold hard cash, and completely zero access to a toilet. The local fire department literally had to drill him out. 48. Trying to quickly establish yourself as the wacky office prankster on your very first day is absolute career suicide. A grown adult new hire decided it would be absolutely hilarious to hide quietly behind the break room door to jump scare his deeply stressed new coworkers. He violently leaped out and screamed right into the terrified face of an older woman who was cautiously balancing a large tray of boiling hot coffee mugs. She understandably shrieked and completely wore the scalding liquid from the neck down, ruining her outfit. He received a fast-tracked termination notice exactly 5 minutes later, proving that corporate America aggressively hates your immature sense of humor. 49. Animal control protocols exist for a very specific reason, mostly to prevent pure, unadulterated furry bloodshed. An overly eager shelter volunteer was casually sweeping the massive feline holding room and completely forgot to aggressively click the heavy metal latch on the primary gate. Over 50 highly agitated, aggressive cats breached containment and flooded directly into the front lobby, which just so happened to be hosting a massive dog obedience training class. The resulting chaos of flying fur, screaming owners, and violently barking hounds looked exactly like a cartoon bar brawl brought to horrifying real life. It took 3 grueling hours just to pry the terrified animals off the ceiling tiles. 50. The information technology department will literally beg you on their hands and knees to absolutely never click on suspicious, flashing internet links. Roughly 10 minutes after sitting through her mandatory cybersecurity briefing, a completely clueless administrative assistant opened a weird email that loudly promised her 2 free luxury cruise tickets. She aggressively clicked the giant shiny button without a single second thought. She definitely did not get a tropical vacation, but she did successfully gift the entire corporation a catastrophic ransomware virus that aggressively locked down every single computer in the multi-story building for 48 agonizing hours. Nothing says welcome aboard quite like single-handedly destroying the secure company network. Let's be brutally honest. Somebody at your current job completely deserves to be on this list. Drop into the comments and tell me exactly how the absolute worst hire at your company managed to survive past day one. I will be reading the most unhinged stories. Hit like, subscribe, and pray you never actually end up in one of my videos.